Half of America is becoming a real estate graveyard, and the reasons will terrify you. These 10 states aren't just losing population, they're experiencing economic collapse, climate disasters, and infrastructure failure that make property ownership a financial death sentence. While the media talks about peaceful rural living, the truth is, these are economic dead zones where buying property means watching your investment die a slow, expensive death. The American real estate industry has been selling you lies about affordable living and wide open spaces. What they don't tell you is that empty land stays empty for brutal economic reasons that will bankrupt anyone foolish enough to buy property in these collapsing states. These aren't hidden gems, they're financial traps where the American dream becomes a foreclosure nightmare. Hit subscribe to Housing Truths USA because we're exposing the states where real estate goes to die and your financial future goes with it. Number 10, Wyoming, the energy economy. Death trap. Wyoming markets itself as wide open spaces and freedom, but it's actually an energy-dependent economy in terminal decline, where property values are collapsing, along with the fossil fuel industry. Despite being larger than the United Kingdom, Wyoming has fewer people than most major cities. That's not peaceful living, it's economic abandonment. The coal, oil, and natural gas industries that supported property values are dying permanently, leaving homeowners trapped in worthless real estate. The infrastructure costs are crushing. Roads, utilities, and services spread across vast distances create per capita costs that bankrupt local governments. Property taxes rise while services decline, creating a death spiral that drives out the remaining residents. Winter weather makes properties uninhabitable for months. Sub-zero temperatures, blizzards that isolate communities for days, and heating costs that exceed mortgage payments turn homeownership into a survival expense. Properties require constant, expensive maintenance just to remain habitable. The Yellowstone supervolcano threat makes the entire state a long-term insurance nightmare. Property insurance companies increasingly recognize geological risks that could destroy all property values instantly. Wyoming isn't freedom and space, it's energy economy collapse disguised as rural living. Number 9, Vermont, the expensive rural poverty trap. Vermont markets itself as quaint New England charm, but it's actually one of America's most expensive states, with an economy that cannot support the cost of living. Housing costs, taxes, and basic living expenses exceed national averages, while employment opportunities remain limited to low-wage service jobs. The charming small-town economy cannot generate income sufficient to support the inflated cost structure. The brutal winter weather lasts 6 to 8 months annually, creating heating costs that can exceed $400 to $600 monthly for modest homes. Snow removal, winter vehicle maintenance, and weather damage repairs turn homeownership into constant, expensive crisis management. Young people flee immediately after education, leaving an aging population unable to maintain the tax base required for municipal services. Schools close, services decline, and property values collapse as the demographic death spiral accelerates. Remote work opportunities are limited by poor internet infrastructure in rural areas. The geographic isolation that creates charm also creates economic isolation from modern employment opportunities. Vermont isn't quaint rural living, it's expensive isolation that destroys household budgets. Number 8, North Dakota, the boom-bust disaster zone. North Dakota marketed itself as oil boom opportunity, but it's actually a boom-bust economy where property buyers get trapped when the economic cycle turns. The brutal climate makes daily living expensive and dangerous. Wind chills of minus 60 degrees Fahrenheit, storms that bury homes, and infrastructure that fails regularly in extreme weather create ongoing costly emergencies for property owners. The oil boom brought temporary population growth that created housing speculation bubbles. When commodity prices declined, the speculative buyers disappeared, leaving property owners with assets worth far less than purchase prices. Even major cities feel like isolated small towns. Fargo, the largest city, offers limited employment diversity. When energy sector employment declines, there are no alternative industries to maintain property values. The geographic isolation makes everything more expensive. Goods, services, and materials cost premium prices due to transportation costs. Property maintenance becomes prohibitively expensive when contractors and supplies must be transported across vast distances. North Dakota isn't energy opportunity, it's boom-bust cycle property destruction. Number 7. South Dakota, the tourist economy. Mirage. South Dakota markets itself as iconic landmarks and affordable living, but it's actually a tourist-dependent economy with extreme weather that destroys property values and quality of life. Mount Rushmore and Black Hills tourism provide seasonal employment that cannot support year-round property ownership costs. The tourist economy offers minimum wage jobs, while property costs assume higher incomes. Extreme weather patterns create constant property damage and insurance costs. Brutal winters, scorching summers, tornadoes, and extreme winds require expensive property reinforcement and frequent repairs. Outside Sioux Falls and Rapid City, economic opportunities are virtually non-existent. Rural properties become isolated from employment, services, and infrastructure, making them essentially worthless for modern living. The agricultural economy provides limited employment while requiring expensive equipment and infrastructure investment. Small farmers face bankruptcy regularly, flooding rural markets with distressed property sales. Healthcare access is catastrophically limited in rural areas. Property ownership in isolated locations means accepting medical care limitations that can become life-threatening emergencies. South Dakota isn't affordable living, it's tourist economy mirage with property ownership costs that exceed local economic capacity. Number 6. Montana, the wilderness survival. Real estate trap. Montana markets itself as breathtaking wilderness living, but it's actually a survival challenge where property ownership means accepting isolation, extreme weather, and infrastructure limitations that make modern living impossible. The geographic isolation makes basic services prohibitively expensive. Grocery stores, medical care, and maintenance services require hours of travel, turning simple necessities into major expeditions and expenses. Extreme weather creates constant property threats. Sub-zero temperatures, blizzards lasting days, wildfires, and flooding require expensive property protection and frequent repairs. Some residents must dig tunnels through snow just to leave their homes. Wildlife poses genuine threats to persons and property. Grizzly bears, mountain lions, and wolves create safety concerns that require expensive protective measures and insurance coverage. Healthcare access is severely limited. Rural areas lack hospitals, specialists, and emergency services. Medical emergencies can become fatalities due to transport distances and weather delays. Internet connectivity is poor or non-existent in large areas, eliminating remote work opportunities. The digital divide isolates Montana properties from the modern economy entirely. Wealthy outsiders are buying scenic properties, pricing out local residents, and destroying community character. Property speculation drives up costs while eliminating the local workforce needed to maintain communities. Montana isn't wilderness paradise. It's survival, living with property costs that exceed survival value. Number 5. West Virginia. The coal economy collapse. Catastrophe. West Virginia represents the complete economic collapse of single industry dependence. This state is experiencing population exodus, infrastructure failure, and economic devastation that makes property ownership financially suicidal. Coal mining employment has vanished permanently with no replacement industries. Entire towns are shutting down, schools are closing, and main streets are empty. Property values collapse when the entire economic foundation disappears. Poverty rates rank among America's worst. Families live paycheck to paycheck when employment exists at all. The economic desperation makes property maintenance impossible and creates neighborhoods of declining abandoned structures. Health crises create unsustainable costs for property owners. Obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and opioid addiction rates are catastrophically high, straining limited medical infrastructure and creating communities in medical crisis. Geographic challenges make everything more expensive. Mountainous terrain creates transportation costs, limits development options, and increases infrastructure expenses. Basic services cost premium prices when they're available at all. Healthcare infrastructure is collapsing. Hospitals are closing. Ambulance response times exceed an hour in rural areas, and medical specialists are unavailable. Property ownership in medical deserts means accepting health risks that can prove fatal. Educational systems are failing. Underfunded schools, low teacher pay, and limited resources trap children in poverty cycles while driving families with options to relocate elsewhere. West Virginia isn't Appalachian charm. It's economic collapse where property ownership means financial suicide. Number 4. Nebraska, the agricultural economy. Death zone. Nebraska markets itself as heartland values and affordable living, but it's actually agricultural economy decline, where property ownership offers no future economic prospects. The agricultural economy provides minimal employment while facing automation, consolidation, and climate pressures. Small farming operations face bankruptcy regularly, flooding rural markets with distressed property sales. Geographic isolation creates extreme boredom and limited opportunities. No mountains, beaches, or major attractions means no tourism economy to supplement agricultural decline. Properties in isolated locations have no alternative economic value. Extreme weather creates constant property damage. Brutal heat, ice storms, and tornado activity require expensive property protection and frequent repairs. Climate volatility makes agricultural property increasingly risky and uninsurable. Employment opportunities are severely limited outside agriculture. Young people leave immediately for cities with actual career prospects, creating demographic death spirals in rural communities. Infrastructure is declining as population decreases and tax base shrinks. Rural properties lose road maintenance, utility reliability, and basic services as municipal governments face budget crises. Healthcare access is limited and declining. Rural hospitals close, specialists are unavailable, and emergency response is inadequate. Property ownership means accepting medical care limitations. Nebraska isn't heartland values, it's agricultural economy decline with property ownership that offers no economic future. Number 3. Alaska, the extreme climate financial disaster. Alaska markets itself as adventure and freedom, but it's actually extreme climate conditions where property ownership costs exceed any reasonable housing value while creating constant, life-threatening situations. Temperatures dropping to minus 50 degrees Fahrenheit make properties uninhabitable without extreme heating costs that can exceed $800 to $1,200 monthly. Some areas experience months without sunlight, creating mental health challenges and seasonal depression that affect entire communities. Geographic isolation makes everything prohibitively expensive. Most communities are accessible only by plane or boat. Shipping supplies takes days or weeks, and basic groceries cost 2 to 3 times national averages. A gallon of milk costs $10 in remote areas. Infrastructure is primitive or non-existent in many areas. Some communities lack running water, plumbing, or reliable electricity. Property ownership means accepting third-world living conditions at premium prices. Wildlife poses genuine threats to safety and property. Moose, bears, and wolves create dangerous situations requiring constant alertness and expensive protective measures. Healthcare access is severely limited. Pregnant women must travel hundreds of miles for prenatal care. Emergency medical situations become life-threatening due to transport limitations and weather delays. Mental health challenges are severe. Isolation, darkness, and extreme conditions create depression, suicide, and substance abuse rates far exceeding national averages. The beauty becomes a psychological trap. Alaska isn't adventure and freedom. It's extreme climate financial disaster with living costs that make property ownership economically impossible. Number 2, Kansas, the forgotten flatland. Economic void. Kansas represents geographic and economic irrelevance where property ownership offers no advantages while subjecting owners to extreme weather and economic limitations. The completely flat geography offers no natural attractions, tourism potential, or economic advantages. Properties have no scenic value or tourism income potential to offset agricultural economy limitations. Extreme weather creates constant property damage and insurance costs. Scorching summers, brutal winters, and tornado alley location require expensive property protection and frequent repairs. Employment is limited to low-wage agricultural and manufacturing jobs that cannot support property ownership costs. Economic opportunities are declining as automation reduces employment in traditional industries. Geographic location offers no advantages. Being in the center of America means distance from both coasts, major cities, and economic opportunities. Properties are isolated from economic growth centers. Entertainment and cultural opportunities are non-existent. No professional sports, tourist attractions, or cultural amenities means no quality of life advantages to offset economic limitations. Young people leave immediately after education, creating demographic death spiral. The remaining aging population cannot maintain tax base required for municipal services. Kansas isn't heartland stability, it's geographic and economic irrelevance, where property ownership offers no benefits while imposing extreme weather costs. Number 1, Mississippi, the complete state failure disaster. Mississippi takes the top spot because it represents complete state failure across every metric that makes property ownership viable. This state combines economic collapse, educational failure, healthcare crisis, and climate disasters into a perfect storm of real estate destruction. Economic devastation is complete. Mississippi has America's lowest median income while offering virtually no employment opportunities. Property ownership becomes impossible when the entire state economy cannot support basic living costs. Educational system failure traps residents in poverty cycles. Underfunded schools, unpaid teachers, and absent resources mean children receive substandard education that prevents economic advancement. Property values collapse in areas with failed schools. Healthcare crisis makes property ownership life-threatening. Highest rates of obesity, diabetes, and heart disease combine with medical deserts, areas with no hospitals, clinics, or specialists. Property ownership means accepting medical care limitations that can prove fatal. Maternal mortality rates rank among world's worst, making the state dangerous for women of childbearing age. This demographic reality devastates family formation and community stability. Opioid epidemic has destroyed entire communities. Treatment options are limited, and addiction tears apart families and neighborhoods. Property ownership means living in communities ravaged by addiction. Climate disasters create ongoing property destruction. Relentless heat, choking humidity, devastating hurricanes, and flooding destroy properties regularly. When disasters strike, many communities never rebuild. Infrastructure is crumbling with no resources for repair or improvement. Roads, bridges, utilities, and basic services operate on inadequate funding with declining tax base. Mississippi isn't Southern charm, It's complete state failure, where property ownership means financial and physical survival risk. These 10 states represent the complete failure of American regional development. From energy economy collapse to climate disasters, educational failure to healthcare crises, these states demonstrate what happens when economic foundations crumble and government services fail. The peaceful rural living and affordable real estate narratives are propaganda designed to trap buyers in economic dead zones. Empty land stays empty for brutal economic reasons that destroy property values and financial futures. Don't believe the lies about hidden gems and small town values. These are economic disaster zones where property ownership means watching your investment die while your quality of life deteriorates. Want to protect yourself from real estate disaster zones? Subscribe to Housing Truths USA. We expose the regional economic failures that will bankrupt you, not the rural living fantasies that destroy financial futures. America is abandoning these states for good reasons. Don't let them abandon your financial future, too.